All right. Out in the bleachers there. Can't see you. So some ideas about practice. I thought it'd be good to maybe explain to you, you probably already know this, but the logic of what we call formal practice. So in the monasteries, we say we're going to do a period of formal practice, which would be maybe sitting and walking for an hour, maybe 4 hours. And then people will say, well, I asked them, do you meditate? Yeah, I meditate 10 minutes every morning, but I try to be mindful, which is a good thing. You don't want to be heedless. And I try to be mindful through the day. But there's something particularly different about formal practice. And that is that you're not engaged with the world of things in any kind of productive way. So, for instance, if I decided that the monastery needs a new table in the library, and they decided it'd be a good thing to build, then I would have to think about the dimensions of the table, design it, figure out what kind of wood I want to use. I'd have to purchase the wood. I would process the wood. I would make the joints. I would glue it together. I would sand it. I would oil it. And all that process, I could say I was being mindful. In fact, I had to be mindful to actually have a successful product. And in that also, I might be watching how I'm rushing to get something done and not doing a good job, or I'm very self-critical of the work, or whatever it might be. So I'm also watching the mind, but mostly I'm engaged with the object. I'm concerned about a product, a result. Now, when you're just walking back and forth for an hour, you're not getting anywhere. There's no product here. And the emphasis on formal practice is on awareness itself rather than the objects of your experience. And this is important to remember, that awareness isn't an attainment. You don't attain awareness, you just remember to be aware. Awareness isn't a product. It's not like a table or a salad that you make for lunch. It's not a product. So what we do is what we do in like formal practice, as we say, we set up the parameters of the practice. So that's the posture and the time. So I said, okay, I'm going to do 45 minutes of meditation, walking, if I want. And I'll do 20 paces. There's A, there's B, and I'll walk back and forth for 45 minutes. And then within that, I'm emphasizing awareness rather than the experience itself. So whether I have a pleasant experience or I have an unpleasant experience isn't very, very important. What's important is that I am aware that, oh, pleasant experience feels like this, unpleasant experience feels like this. The feeling that I'm really practicing well feels like this. The feeling that I'm not practicing well feels like this. So all the time, the emphasis is on the knowing, on the puru, rather than on the experience itself. And one of the most important things you're observing in that kind of consideration is tanha. Because as I walk back and forth, tanha rises. I want to get, maybe you've been conditioned to try to attain something. So then you practice really hard to attain something. Or you're conditioned to try to get rid of thought. So you walk back and forth trying to get rid of thought. Or you get bored and you want to go away. So tanha comes and goes, liking and dislike coming and going. And the job is to sustain a kind of receptive awareness, I would say. And this is a language that you find so many Western teachers using now, Luangpor Viradhammo, myself, welcoming or receptive awareness. And the emphasis is on the puru, on the ru, on the knowing, rather than on the quality of your experience. When I'm building the table, the emphasis is on the quality of the workmanship, on the goals I have and on the little schedules that I make for myself. Here, it really doesn't matter whether you're enjoying the meditation or not. It's not a matter of success or failure. It's the knowing. And what happens in that kind of, if you have that sort of insight, I suppose, about what formal practice is about, it's not about attainment. It's not about becoming a better person. It's not about getting rid of your kilesa. It's about knowing, or awareness is your real home. Okay? So I sit for 45 minutes, I walk, whatever. And during that period, maybe the experience isn't very interesting, boring, or nothing much happening, feel a bit restless, feel a bit sleepy, these different kinds of things. But all the time, I'm emphasizing awareness, 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 awareness. And then what happens when you leave the Dharma hall? I don't know about you, but I come out of it, I'm peaceful. Not because I was looking for peace as an experience or trying to make a product called peacefulness. No, that I was aware of change and didn't react to that changing conditioning. And I stayed with the puru. Because the awareness is very silent. It is peaceful. And our constant preoccupation with the experiences of life prevents us from seeing that peacefulness. So let's say you leave the meditation hall, and then like I leave the meditation hall, I just enjoy the beauty. I look at the orchids. I go down to the stream. I listen to the sound of the water. I listen to the exotic birds. So I'm quite enjoying sense experience. Now, if I wanted to do formal practice with the river, what would I do? Well, I'd go and put my chair by the river, and I'd say 1 hour. And then maybe I'd take a theme and I'd say stillness flowing. That would be fun. What did Luangpor Cha mean by stillness flowing? So then maybe I just use sound, and I would just listen to the river, and I notice change. And then I say, well, what is stillness? And I do that for 1 hour. And that's different than going down to the river and saying, oh, what a lovely river. Oh, I wonder if there's any fish there. And then going to that's what I do too. I do both. And I look at the orchids, the lovely orchids. But that isn't what we mean by formal practice. So formal practice has this element of stability and time, and constantly emphasizing awareness of the way things are. Now, if you're like, I know some of you are from the Mahasi tradition, and I know sometimes I met someone in California recently, and she said, I got anicca, but I haven't got anatta. I said, what? You want anatta? You are someone who wants anatta? I mean, do you see the paradox? She wanted some experience. She had one experience. And as long as there's me trying to get the experience, which the teacher says I should get, it's still tanha. It's still bhava tanha. It's still me becoming. It's still suffering. Not that you don't have experiences, or if you've been taught about attainments of insight, or attainments of concentration, and you take that on board, then you start to program. You're programmed with an agenda. The agenda is to attain, to get something. Okay, you can do that. I'm suggesting try trusting in awareness. All right? Try putting saddha on awareness itself rather than on the particular experiences within the field of awareness. So, and then see what happens in 10 days' time. Or after one sitting. So to me, it seems to be a trust in awareness rather than a trust in desire. And that means you have to be aware of desire. So again, if you want to meditate, meditate. If you don't want to meditate, so you can see how if over, like we have it, like the afternoons, we have from 2 o'clock till 5 o'clock. And then part of it, I'll give some instruction. Part of it will be just sort of free form. You can see how if after, let's say at 4 o'clock, you said, well, that's enough. And you read a little bit of book, and maybe you had a coffee, and then you looked at the river, And then you sniff the orchids. Oh, the orchids don't have any smell. And then 5 o'clock. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But you would have been consuming experience. And it's pleasant. And I do that. We all do that. But this period of formal practice is not consuming an experience. It's being the witness to experience. And as that witnessing consciousness becomes more embedded in your system of faith, I would say, you really trust it, you begin to see there is a deep silence behind this whole experience of all the experiences that we have. And that deep silence is what I call the background. Well, many teachers call that the background. So the foreground is your thoughts, your memories, your aching knees, and your desire to go to the toilet is the foreground, and all the rest of it that you get. The background is silent knowing. And I would suggest that that's a very good model for trying to develop, that you learn how to be the background. And so this meditation, I'll suggest some ideas about that. And one of the ways you can touch the background is through the skillful use of thought and the silence after a thought. If you take the thought, it's like this. Oposamedo uses this a lot. Thai Ajahns uses it. It's Penyang Niang. Now, if I just say, let's say I feel hot. No, it's hot. I'm not really aware. I'm just complaining. Or I feel bored. Oh, I'm really, really bored. I'm not really aware of boredom. I'm just bored. But if I say to myself, boredom feels like this, and then I allow that, I consciously say a word, it's like this, and then I go to the silence after the word. Then you'll see, there's silence within the boredom. And that is the background. You can do this all the time. So if you're meditating and you're going to get kidnapped, right? You'll be planning your next retreat or, arguing with someone at work, or you'll get kidnapped. That'll happen. But at some point in the kidnapping process, you'll also feel some pain, someone will cough, and you'll be back in the moment. So it seems to me that is a very, very important moment. What do you do with that moment? And I would suggest put a word in, just put one word in, and then notice the silence after the word. Don't try to get rid of thought. Don't go to analysis, go to what awareness is. And so I suggest the word I, or om, or what's the tone for I in Thai? Okay, or use I. Now, I'm better with English, by the way. But if you say the word I, it's a very powerful word. Just I. And then you just wait and you notice the silence afterwards. I. You have the background. And the background is silent witnessing, silent knowing. If you go to the foreground, which what we do, so you find yourself kidnapped and you're shopping at IKEA, or how do you pronounce it? The Dutch have a way of pronouncing IKEA, the Canadians and the Thais. So you're shopping and then I sneeze and you're back. Then quite often what you do is you say, I have to stop thinking. And you try to force yourself to stop thinking. Now I'm suggesting that you're awake now. You're back. So great. So make it a good moment rather than a regretful moment. And there is a difference. So you find yourself, you're lost in some kind of planning or worrying, and then your knee hurts, and then you're there again. Oh, there's planning. And then just say I. Just say I. And feel the silence of the witness. Now, you have to do that 1,000 times a sitting because the mind is so insidiously, persistently boring that it keeps coming up. But if you don't try to get rid of thought, right, and you notice the gap after thought with a word, you start to touch the background, which is silent knowing, which is silent witnessing. It's not the foreground. And if you get good at this, then the foreground can be busy, but the background is always silent. It's always silent. It's never absent. Presence is never absent. There's a t-shirt going around I've heard somewhere. So I'll kind of, I don't know if that's too esoteric, but it's a very helpful method because quite often we're trying to get rid of thinking. So now you're using a thought. If you didn't want to use the word I, you could use it's like this, or it's the same with puto. If you just say puto, and then you're really silent after the word, there it is. That's the knowing. That's puto. But if you just say puto, 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 like a parrot, you won't get to the silence. You probably keep your mind busy, right? So you want to get to the silence. If I ask you right now just to do this, just listen. If you just listen to sound, do this with me. Listen. Let the sounds come to you. You have the silence. You're not judging the sound, right? You're not looking for a sound. Hopefully. You're not trying to get rid of a sound. No tanha. And listening is a very good way to enter into that silence of the mind. So you use things like listening. And if you do this again with me, just listen. There's the flowing of sound and there's the stillness of knowing. And then the I really helps you to do that. Okay. So we'll give that a go. And maybe we'll do that as a guided meditation. So if you want to stretch your legs, you can. I'll give an instruction with that. And then after the instructions, I'll just sit up here. So stretch your legs a bit if you'd like. So we'll do a 45-minute sitting. I'll give a bit of instruction and I'll return to my meditation chair and we'll wait for the bell. So begin by listening. And listening is a very good way of talking about mindfulness or awareness. So listen, but receptive listening. You allow the sounds to come to you. And notice the silence. So you're allowing sounds to be what they are. You're not looking for any particular experience. It's just this experience, Penyang Yang. And you're accepting whatever the experience is, not trying to get rid of it. It's like this. So listening, there's the sound and there's the silence of awareness. Now feel your hands. Feel warmth or pressure on your hands, tactile sensation. Let that be conscious. Notice the silence. Silent witnessing. Listen to sound. Notice the changing nature of sound. And what is unchanging. What is not changing. Feel your hands. Notice that your hands are in awareness. The feelings, not a concept. Don't go to thought, just a pure sensation. Hands. That feeling is in awareness. Listen to sound. Sound is in awareness. Feel your breathing. Feel the breathing of the body. Now don't concentrate on breath, but just let it be conscious. Let it just come into consciousness. And you are the welcoming witness. Notice the silence. And finally, the suggestion that when you get caught up with thought, when you awaken to that fact, then introduce the word I. And then notice that same silence after the word. So you say the word I. And then notice the silent witnessing afterwards, silent awareness. So our training is to return to the silent awareness. That's the background. The foreground is the pain in your leg, memories, the sound of the air conditioning. This is coming and going. That's changing. And what is unchanging? Stillness, silence, is awareness itself. So be that awareness. So I'll leave that as suggestions and we'll just sit quietly for the rest of the session. So let's do some walking meditation. I'll give some instruction on that this afternoon, but I think I gave you enough ideas this morning. So please go ahead, and we're back here at 2. And then there's a bell at 11 o'clock, correct? So if you can, keep going. If you can't, don't worry about it. Okay, please go ahead.